had the privilege of working with you as well, especially during the Miss Asian Global Pageant. You're like me. You're an Asian, but you were born in the South. I was born in Mississippi, if you guys can't tell. And May was born in Georgia. I have my stories and my experience growing up there, but I want to hear from you. What was your experience growing up in Georgia as a young Asian woman?
It's definitely interesting, but I had nothing to compare it to. That's really all I knew. So people would come up to me, they would like touch me, they'd be like, whoa, you're like the third Asian I've ever seen in my life. So there was definitely that piece. I remember getting my backpack kicked every single time I got on the bus, like a lot of racial slurs, people being surprised that I could speak English and that I was like born in this country. But I'm sure you relate. I will say though, it became the most apparent when I finally had to live somewhere other than with my family in college. I think that's when like the cultures are different and like when it's very apparent of like, oh wow, even in my own home, I might not really feel that welcome all the time.
What was it like when you first, I guess, moved out? So actually, what was it like when you were living with your family and you said you had some, but was there any type of support from your family in terms of when you told them, hey, I'm not exactly welcomed out there? Did your parents are like, oh, that's okay, or did it just like, you deal with it yourself? Was there any support that they gave you?
It was tough. Like, I can't fault them for it because I feel like they came into this country knowing that they were going to be like othered or like they never really called America their home. So when I was hurt from being perceived as the other in my own country, like they didn't understand that. Like, it's like if we were to drive past a courthouse, they wouldn't think that's like my country's courthouse. They think that's like an American courthouse. Whereas for me, it'd be like, oh, this is like all I know. So I can't, I have to give them grace for that, but it was tough, and like that's partially why I'm so passionate about advocating for Asian American, not just like rights, but like representation, like awareness of our unique stories and struggles, because our immigrant parents were on survival mode and they won't be able to have the same lens and the same view that we have.
Tell me what it was like when you first moved out and you lived on your own as a young adult woman in college, and now you didn't have even your parents' shelter. You were now living with strangers in a dorm room, I guess, or an apartment. What was that shock like?
Yeah, so Francis knows funny stories. But it was really tough, to be honest. I remember like finding a cockroach in my shoe, or like they would write like hatred comments on like the fridge door. It got really tough when they started to like duct tape the temperature, like the thermometer, so I can adjust like the thermometer in my room. And the funny thing is I never saw it as racism. I just thought like, oh, like they're just being mean, like I'm the only non-white person. Like I'm just gonna do what my parents taught me my whole life, which is just to kind of like, agree, like don't like cause a ruckus, just kind of like, I just internalized everything. I didn't really see it as a problem. And I look back and I feel like I want to hold her with so much grace, because it's like you didn't even really know what was happening. But in not just this country, but life in general, you need to advocate for yourself. Like you need to stand up, even if you are the other, even if you are like feeling insecure, like no one can do that for you. Your mom is not going to come every single time and be that voice for you. So it really, I look back and I realize kind of the ways in which I was allowing my culture and my upbringing and perhaps my insecurity of being a minority, which is sad to say, I was allowing that to cloud my head.
What were you going through at this point? You pretty much were essentially just accepting what was given to you, right?
Yeah.
And then you eventually moved out to California, right? This was still in Georgia when you were going through this, right?
This happened in Georgia, yeah.
All right, and you came out to California, and that was, if I'm not mistaken, an entirely new vision and a view of what this environment was like. And that's also where we got a chance to meet, and again, the Miss Asian Global Pageant, and got to work with you. But what was now your discovery of your new self in a place that was much more open and accepting?
Yeah, so I walked through Chinatown for the first time, and it's like, wow, I haven't owned chopsticks in 4 years, like time to buy some. So that was really interesting, and I felt really connected to my culture, volunteered a lot throughout there. But honestly, MAG really helped me to feel a sense of community and a sense of like feeling beauty. And I remember a very pivotal moment for me was when our pageant coach had us practice walking in these heels in a public place, and being in a tiny apartment I lived in a basement actually. There was like I didn't have like mirrors to like watch myself walk. So I had to listen to her advice, and I went and did that in a public gym. So you can imagine there's like gym bros like lifting, and then here I am in literally a bikini and my 7-inch heels trying to practice walking. It's like I don't have family here that I can just like go to their house to practice. And that in itself taught me so much about social anxiety and feeling like the odd one out and embracing that.
How did you use that moment to overcome your fears?
So I was in the bathroom crying. I was like, I'm not leaving in my bikini and my heels. Like, I was about to turn around and go home. But then I just kind of realized, I was like, okay, like, am I really gonna allow these strangers' opinions of me who I have no idea who they are, they have no idea who I am? Am I gonna allow that to overwhelm my goals, which is I wanna do this pageant, I wanna learn how to walk in heels, I wanna challenge myself, I want to not care about what people think. So it's just like weighing that, like what's more important to you, and at the end of the day, I actually thought of a Chinese proverb when I was in that bathroom crying. It's like, if you think about someone's opinion, you become their slave. So I was like, I'm not gonna let myself be enchained to random people. I'd rather enchain myself to my own goals and actually get somewhere. So I came out, had to just own it. And yes, people stopped me, like there's ugly looks, but if you just like laugh and make it fun, I actually made a friend out of it. So that's the thing about life, like just own it and just trust that you need to trust yourself that you're doing what's best for you. And if I were like, let's say actually interrupting like a family or if there's children nearby, like I'm gonna be considerate as well, but I need to put my own needs first without overly being consumed with the thoughts of others.
That's excellent. What was some of the core lessons that you might have learned during the pageant itself, not just practicing for it, but I guess during pageant week in terms of also self-love and self-value?
I would say like yourself best. There'll be times where I remember during pageant week, like people would practice until like 1 or 2 or 3 a.m.
Yep.
And I would just do it too because I was like, oh, like this is what I should be doing. But I look back and I'm like, okay, maybe I should have like set a boundary and been like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed, like practice has ended. I don't need to go like do too much and burn myself dry. I think it's really important to have a strong sense of self-image. If any people are thinking about doing MAG in the future, like you can't let someone tell you if you're like pretty enough, skinny enough, pale enough, tan enough. Like you have to just go in knowing that this is like what you bring. And I wish I focused a little bit more on my opinion of myself and what I know to be true about me rather than just trying to pander to like different types of beauty standards or like just spreading myself too thin.
I love the fact that you're actually being able to see yourself with more clarity than letting the outside voices cloud that. And then now you've moved back now to the East Coast again now, right? And you did share a story with me that I thought was amazing and I was so proud of. You were, if I'm not mistaken, at a Broadway show, right? And I love
Performing.
Not performing, yeah, watching. What happened during that was very pivotal in how you now deal with the world?
Yeah, so it was Christmas time. I was touring. I just moved. I was touring my sister around New York, and we get to this Broadway show. It's me, like an empty seat, and then this like older woman. We can call her Karen. And I remember like I'm holding the coat, like all these bags from like touring with her all day, like gloves, mittens, the whole 9 yards, and I can't even see the stage. But there's an empty seat, so like gently I was like, oh, like, do you think I can put my bag down in this seat? And she was like, oh, you think if I say something you'll understand? And I just was like, okay, well, can I put my bag in the seat? And she still said something a little derogatory. And I feel like the old me would have been like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, like I'll just like hold on to my stuff. But I was like, you know what, it's an empty seat, like I'm just gonna put my bag down. Put my bag down, and I'm like sweating almost, like during the show, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is she okay with this, like da-da-da. But again, that's when it's like, I'm letting someone else's opinion be more important than my own. Like I'm also a human, like I love you, I love everyone, but I also love me. So it's like, I deserve to enjoy the show. I deserve to use this empty seat that no one's in. Anyways, the intermission comes on, and her daughter, who's sitting on the other side of her, who's also like in her 40s, I think, like comes around and she's like barking in my face as if I'm not even a human. Like she's like, like she was like, you don't need to put your bag there, that's not okay, like causing a huge ruckus. And I'm so happy my little sister was here, like obviously she's like Asian too, because she was like, oh, like she was about to be like, I'm so sorry, like move the thing, and I was like, no, like I was like, hey, listen, like if it really bothers you that much, I can move my thing, but like at the end of the day, like we can all respect each other. And she was like, why don't you try the floor, like for your bag? And I was just like, I wasn't asking for a recommendation, but sure, like I just grabbed my bag. And I think for me, that showed a lot of growth because it wasn't easy to do in the moment, something so small, but it also shows like, hey, like I'm someone who's worthy of respect and I can set a boundary. Had I just said, oh my God, sorry, move the bag, I mean, same solution, but I would have left that situation with so much anger and I'd been like, that's not fair. And like, I would be like angry at myself for not standing up for myself. But I left the situation being like, I respected myself by saying what I need to say. And I also respected her by, you know, not bothering her. Like, it's like, do no harm, but also take no harm. And I was able to leave that disrespectful situation feeling really proud of myself and just proud that my sister got to see that and that I'm, in a small way, breaking that stereotype of like, you're not gonna bark at me just because I look East Asian. Like, I'm not just like the submissive Asian girl trope. And like, little by little, I feel like we can really break that.
What are some of the steps you think are super important for a person to be able to truly respect themselves, love themselves, and value themselves?
That is a tough question. I'm gonna have to bill you for this therapy. I think it looks different for everyone, similar to what the woman before me said. I think you really need to, for me, I think my faith is really important. I'll start by saying that. And the Bible does say, love your neighbor as yourself. And I used to think just like love everybody, run myself dry, pour out of myself until I'm empty, just pouring into everyone else. But it's like, at the end of the day, if I'm loving you for Francis or loving this person for that person, like why am I not loving May for May? Like I'm also just a person. I shouldn't love myself more than I love you, but I should love myself at least the same. So I think if you can think about the love that you have for your best friend or your mom or your dad, like whoever is important for your life, treat yourself with that love too, right? I wouldn't want a Karen yelling at my mom like that, so I'm not gonna let her yell at me like that. And I think also too, it's like realizing it's not always about you. Like self-love isn't like, oh my gosh, like I must be a 10 out of 10, like flat stomach, like perfect skin. Like that's not, I don't need to do that to love myself. I don't need to have that to love myself. If my mom grew a pimple, I wouldn't love her any less. Like why do I feel that way about myself?
So going forward, what's in store for yourself now and in the coming futures? Are you going to be working more on the East Coast, coming back to West Coast? Are you going to be doing anywhere pageants or are you going to be helping in any shape or form, any vessel, younger girls also to find their own path and their own values in their life?
I love that question. I love mentorship, so anyone's open to reach out. I'm starting a series on Instagram about social anxiety, which kind of inspired this talk. So follow along my journey. And then I love volunteering, so I still help out certain restaurants in Chinatown here in San Francisco, helping them redesign menus, things like that.
Nice.
But I would say my biggest source of passion right now is working in AI, which I do for my 9 to 5, which can be like 9 to 6, 9 to 7 sometimes. But I'm creating like a ChatGPT type of thing for the federal government, so that's been really exciting.
And do we see you either East Coast or West Coast now, or what do you think?
Well, my client project at Deloitte, where I work, ends in October, so maybe I'll come back, who knows. It has been such a treat just being here for a week, getting to hang out with all my best friends.
So thank you so much for being here. We always love having you back here in the West Coast. We hope you come back, and we hope you make amazing changes there in the East Coast with all the wisdom and the love and compassion you're sharing now. Thank you so much, May.
Thank you, Francis.